brand new and just what you've been waiting for. Superman. Superman is not mentioned anywhere in the ad, but the iconic cover of the upcoming Action Comics #1 sure would have grabbed your attention. And this ad was posted identically in all three of DC's comic books with a May 1938 cover date, making these the first appearances of Superman in print in comic books. The ad is featured in Detective Comics #15, New Adventure Comics #26, and More Fun Comics #31. In total, there were 18 different comics with a May 1938 cover date. It was a super month, as Dell Comics gave us Super Comics #1, May 1938. This issue marks the beginning of a new series from Dell, which would last for 11 years. Highlights include Terry and the Pirates, Dick Tracy, Smitty, The Gumps, Little Orphan Annie, Smilin' Jack, Gasoline Alley, and many more. These characters moved over from Popular Comics #27 last month in April 1938. Almost every strip in this new issue is a continuation from Popular Comics. There is an Edgar Church pedigree copy of this book from the Mile High collection. Gerber rates this book as an 8, which is rare, meaning estimated 20 or less copies to exist. The cover features Dick Tracy, Little Orphan Annie, and Terry and the Pirates. Dick Tracy is featured in a 5-page story from writer-artist Chester Gould and is reprinted from the Dick Tracy Sundays dated April 4th, 1937 through April 25th, 1937, and is continued from Popular Comics #27 the month earlier. Little Orphan Annie appears in a 5-page story from writer-artist Harold Gray and reprints from the Little Orphan Annie Sundays, dated April 4th, 1937 through April 25th. And this is also continued from Popular Comics #27 the month before. And Terry and the Pirates appears in a 5-page story from writer-artist Milton Caniff. The adventure story is continued from Popular Comics #27, which came out last month from Dell Comics. Comics on Parade #2, published by United Features Syndicate, May 1938. Highlights include Tarzan, Little Abner, Nancy, Fritzy Ritz, Captain and the Kids, and many others. Feature Funnies #8, published by Quality Comics, May 1938. Parts of this issue are reprinted from the Wags comic, the UK edition published by Editors Press Service. Issue number 40, dated December 3rd, 1937. Some of the highlights include cover art by Russell Ross featuring Jane Arden and Lena Pry. Lollapalooza appears in a 4-page story from writer-artist Rube Goldberg and features reprints from the Frank J. Markey Syndicate. The Clock appears in a 5-page story from writer-artist George Brenner. This early superhero title features The Clock and Captain Kane and is reprinted from an issue of the Wags UK magazine from Editors Press Service. Hawks of the Seas is a 4-page story from writer-artist Will Eisner using the alias Willis Renzi. This historical adventure features the Hawk and Clock Carlos and is also reprinted from Wags, the UK version from Editors Press Service, issue number 38, dated November 19th, 1937. Funny Pages, Volume 2, Number 8, from Centaur Publications, May 1938. This is the 3rd issue published from Centaur. Features art by Gil Fox, Frank Frollo, Bob Wood, Craig Fox, George Nagel, and Claire S. Moe. Funny Picture Stories, Volume 2, Number 8, published by Centaur Publications, May 1938. The cover art is by Charles Biro on the heading, Go On, Knock It Off. Frozen Justice is a 4-page story that features writing and art by Jack Cole. Star Comics #12, published by Centaur Publications, May 1938. This is the 3rd issue published by Centaur. It features Little Nemo in an appearance. Gerber rates this issue a 7, or scarce. The strip Riders of the Golden West begins in this issue, and there is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this issue. Star Ranger #12, published by Centaur Publications, May 1938. This is the 3rd issue from Centaur, and in fact, this is the last issue of this title to be published. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this issue. Starting with the next issue, number 13, the title would change to Cowboy Comics and be published by Centaur Publications. The cover art is by Jack Cole. Some of the highlight art in this issue include Jack Cole, Fred Gardenier, and Paul Gustafson. Feature book number 13, Inspector Wade, published by David McKay Publications, May 1938. The Photojournal Guide to Comic Books from Gerber rates this as a 7 or scarce. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this issue. The cover art is of Inspector Wade by Lyman Anderson. And this issue highlights this specific character for the first time. There's a 36-page story called The Swiss Head Waiter, with writing by Sheldon Stark as a ghost for Edgar Wallace, with art by Lyman Anderson in this detective mystery story featuring the characters Inspector Wade and Donovan. And this original story appeared in the Scotland Yard book by Edgar Wallace. The original printing unknown. Wallace died 3 years prior to the start of the comic strip. And this is reprinted from the Inspector Wade of Scotland Yard from King Features Syndicate, dated June 17th, 1937 through August 26, 1937. There is another 36-page comic strip based on Inspector Wade called The Black, written by Sheldon Stark as a ghost for Edgar Wallace, with art again by Lyman Anderson. And this one features the characters Inspector Wade, Donovan, and The Black. It is reprinted from the strip reprints at King Features, August 28, 1937 through November 6, 1937, based on the 1935 novel by Edgar Wallace featuring Detective Minter. Lyman Anderson, born May 5, 1907, lived until 1993. In the 30s, major publisher Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson conceived a comic book, New Fun, and Anderson worked on the first 2 issues. In 1934, Lyman Anderson was contacted by Sheldon Stark as a possible artist for a strip Stark was designing for King Features Syndicate. The resulting strip, Inspector Wade, appeared in daily newspapers later that year, and he worked on it until 1938. Ace Comics number 14, published by David McKay Publications, May 1938. The cover art is by Joe Musial and features the characters the Katzenjammer Kids and Barney Google. Highlights include Jungle Jim, a 4-page story from writer Don Moore with art by Alex Raymond. And this comes from reprints from the Sundays dated April 25th through May 16th, 1937. Blondie appears in a 4-page story from artist Chick Young. And the Phantom appears in his 4th appearance in comics in a 4-page story written by Lee Falk with art by Ray Moore. The Adventure Jungle superhero title features the Phantom and Goran and is reprinted from the daily strips beginning December 16th, 1936. Detective Comics number 15, published by DC Comics, May 1938. This issue features a coming soon ad for Action Comics number 1, which would appear the next month. Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster actually drew 2 stories for this issue as well. There's a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this issue. The cover art is by Craig Flessel. The promo ad for Action Comics number 1 takes a full page. Speed Saunders appears in a 6-page story from writer-artist Craig Flessel. Bob Kane returns in a 1-page story with Oscar the Gumshoe. Larry Steele is a 6-page story from writer-artist Will Eli in his detective mystery. Lightning Strikes Once is 2 pages from writer Vincent Sullivan under the alias Paul Dean with art by Craig Flessel. Spy is 4 pages from the team of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Their adventure title features the characters Mr. Death, Bart Reagan, and Sally Norris. And Siegel and Shuster also team up for the detective mystery Slam Bradley for 13 pages, featuring the characters Chester Glass, Shorty Morgan, and Slam Bradley. Ruth Harkness, Her Adventures in the Far East, is a 1-page story written and drawn by Will Eli. The Funnies, number 20, published by Dell Comics, May 1938. The cover is of Alley Oop. Tim McCoy appears in a 6-page story featuring the Western Frontier movie Western Star, adapted from the Monogram motion picture. Dan Dunn comes back in a 4-page story from writer-artist Norman Marsh, and this crime story is reprinted from the Dan Dunn Sundays at the Publishers Syndicate. Four Aces returns in a 2-page story from writer-artist Hal Forrest. His adventure aviation story is reprinted from the Four Aces Sundays at the Bell Syndicate. And Sheldon Mayer gives us 2 more pages of Scribbly. Tip Top Comics, number 25, published by United Features Syndicate, May 1938. The cover is of Captain and the Kids, or the Katzenjammer Kids. Also, highlights include Tarzan, Little Abner, and Jim Hardy. There is a Lost Valley pedigree copy of this issue. King Comics number 26, published by David McKay Publications, May 1938. Cover art is by Joe Musial and features Popeye and Henry. There is a Lost Valley pedigree copy of this issue. Highlights include Thimble Theater, a 4-page story from writer-artist E.C. Cigar, featuring the characters Popeye, Wimpy, and Olive Oil, reprinted from the Thimble Theater Sundays at King Features Syndicate, dated August 8, 1937 through August 29, 1937. Flash Gordon is a 4-page story from writer Don Moore with art by Alex Raymond. This early adventure science fiction story features Flash Gordon, Dale Arden, and Hans Zarkov, reprinted from the Flash Gordon Sundays at King Features Syndicate, dated August 1st through August 22nd, 1937. Sport Features is a 1-page story drawn by Jack Burnley. His sports story comes from the Sports Feature Sundays at King Features Syndicate, dated 1937. Brick Bradford is a 4-page story from writer William Ritt with art by Clarence Gray. This early science fiction story is reprinted from the Brick Bradford Sundays at the King Features Syndicate, dated August 1st through August 22nd, 1937. And Mandrake the Magician appears in a 4-page story from writer Lee Falk with art by Phil Davis. This early fantasy supernatural story features Mandrake the Magician and Lothar, and is reprinted from the Mandrake the Magician Sundays at King Features Syndicate, dated August 1st through August 22nd, 1937. There is a feature books ad in this issue for feature book number 13, on sale May 15th, featuring Inspector Wade. New Adventure Comics number 26, published by DC Comics, May 1938. Collectors consider this the rarest DC comic ever published. DC collector Ian Levine put together a complete run of every DC comic, and this was the very last book he could locate. Inside the cover, there is a full-page ad for Action Comics number 1, making this tied for one of the very first times an image of Superman was ever in print. The cover art was in the hands of DC's best cover artist of the early era, Craig Flessel. The interior is a mix of adventure and humor, with the creator of DC's 2 greatest characters both contributing. Bob Kane drew some gag strips for this issue, and Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster drew the Federal Men feature. The first issue, published by Detective Comics, Inc., as seen on the indicia in the first page. The cover art is by Craig Flessel, featuring an Indian fighting an eagle. Federal Men return in a 4-page story from Siegel and Schuster in their detective mystery featuring the character Steve Carson and also the Junior Federal Men Club and Sandy Keene. Nadir, Master of Magic, returns in a 4-page story from writer-artist Will Eli in his early supernatural story featuring Nadir and the Captain. Dale Daring returns in a 2-page story from writer-artist Will Eli featuring the character Captain Don Brewster. Robin Hood is back in an 8-page story from writer-artist Sven Elven and features the first appearance of the characters Little John and the Merry Men. Bob Kane writes and draws Professor Doolittle in a 2-page story featuring the first appearance of this character in this humor title. Rusty and His Pals is a 5-page story written by Bill Finger with art by Bob Kane. The adventure story features Rusty, Specs, Tubby, and the villain Chen Fu. Milton Bill Finger, born February 8, 1914, lived until January 18, 1974, an American comic strip and comic book writer best known as the co-creator with Bob Kane of the character Batman and the co-architect of the series development. Finger did not receive proper credit for his hand in the development of Batman at first. Acknowledgement came years after Finger's death. Finger also wrote many of the original 1940s Green Lantern stories after co-creating the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, and would go on to contribute to the development of numerous other comic book series. Odds and Ends is a 1-page story from writer-artist Sheldon Moldoff. Sheldon Shelley Moldoff, born April 14, 1920, lived until February 29, 2012, an American comic book artist best known for his early work on the DC Comics characters Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and as one of Bob Kane's primary ghost artists on Batman. He co-created the Batman supervillains Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, the Second Clayface, and Batmite, as well as the original heroes Batgirl, Batwoman, and Ace the Bat-Hound. Moldoff is the sole creator of the Black Pirate. Click Evans is a 6-page story from writer-artist Maurice Kashuba. In this adventure story featuring Click Evans, who is a newsreel cameraman. This is the only appearance of this strip, and it is the first DC published work by Maurice Kashuba. Popular Comics number 28, published by Dell Comics, May 1938. This issue features the first appearance of Gene Autry, the Western star in comic books. There is a 6-page Gene Autry comic story adapted from a 1938 Republic movie. Tailspin Tommy returns in a 4-page story from writer-artist Hal Forrest. Don Dixon and the Hidden Empire is a 2-page science fiction story from writer Bob Moore and art by Carl Pfeiffer. And Moore and Pfeiffer also team up again for Tad of the Tanbark in a 2-page story. Son of the Minutemen is a 2-page story written by Sam Merwin Jr. under the alias Carter Sprague. This series precedes by a year Merwin's first published science fiction story in the pulp, Thrilling Wonder Stories. More Fun Comics number 31, published by DC Comics, May 1938. This is published a month before Action Comics number 1, and it contains a full-page ad for this book, tying for the first printed appearance of Superman. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this issue. Craig Flessel did the cover art featuring a Robinson Crusoe type theme. This is the first issue published by Detective Comics, Inc., currently located at 480 Lexington Avenue in New York. Sandra of the Secret Service appears in a 3-page story from writer-artist Will Eli. Dr. Occult returns in a 4-page story in this early supernatural story from Siegel and Schuster using their common alias Leaguer and Ruth. Buzz Brown is in a 6-page story from artist Craig Flessel. Hank and Hunk is a 2-page story drawn by Russell Cole under the alias Alger. This humor title features the only appearance of this strip featuring Hank and Hunk. Slap Happy Ennis Pappy is a 2-page story from artist B. Block, and this is the only appearance of this comic strip. Collard is a 2-page story from writer Thomas Delaney with art by Fred Gardenier using the initials FBG. Mark Marson of the Interplanetary Police is a 2-page early science fiction story drawn by Tom Hickey, featuring the characters Mark Marson, Diane Greystone, Ransford, and Monty. This is the last appearance of this strip. Johnny Law appears in a 4-page story from artist Will Eli. Radio Squad returns in a 2-page story from Siegel and Schuster in their detective mystery featuring the characters Sandy Keene and Larry Trent. Bob Kane writes and draws Ginger Snap, a 2-page humor story aimed at children and features the first appearance of Ginger Snap. Brad Hardy is a 2-page story drawn by Tom Hickey. This is the last appearance of this strip. Jack Woods appears in a 4-page story for writer-artist Will Eli. Biff Brody and Pop Beaner is a 7-page story, possibly drawn by Craig Flessel, a detective mystery that appeared only this one time. Red Logan is a lengthy 8-page story drawn by Ed Winiarski under the alias Win. The adventure story features Red Logan, Trigger, and Butch. This is the first appearance of this strip. Mickey Mouse Magazine, number 32, or Volume 3, number 8, published by Western Publishing, May 1938. Features Donald Duck. Mickey Mouse is featured in a 3-page story, and another 2-page story, and there is an Ingersoll Mickey Mouse wristwatch advertisement for a page, and another Donald Duck strip. Famous Funnies, number 46, published by Eastern Color, May 1938. Still the longest-running modern comic book to this date. The cover art is by Victor Pazmino, featuring the characters Sam Smithers and Pigtails. War on Crime returns in a 3-page story from writer Rex Collier, with art possibly by Kemp Starrett. This early crime story is the first one published in modern comics, and is featured in every issue. Copyright The Ledger Syndicate. And Jerry Iger gives us 1-page story of Bobby, aimed at young readers. Copyright Eisner Iger.